Good afternoon and welcome back to the Warhammer 3 newsroom. I'm your host COLONELDAMNEDERS and we're back with some more breaking news. This time we're getting a full breakdown of every new Law of Magic coming with Warhammer 3 on launch. Now let's waste no more time and dive right in. First up we have the Law of Tzeentch. Now I've already heard the names of these spells, but now we get to learn the actual effects. The Blue Fire of Tzeentch is a magic missile spell. This is a single target missile spell that presumably does fire damage that only hits harder when combined with the debuff Warp Flame, which increases a target's weakness to fire. The Overcast version of this deals increased armor-piercing damage. The Pink Fire of Tzeentch is a breath spell. This deals fire damage in a cone shape and of course applies the Warp Flame debuff. The Overcast simply increases the damage dealt. The Treason of Tzeentch is a hex that affects enemy troops in an area. This lowers the leadership of all affected enemies, and the Overcast also lowers melee attack stats. Glean Magic is a hex spell with some unique effects. It increases your army's Winds of Magic reserves and the speed of winds moving from the reserves to active use, whilst decreasing both of these for the enemy. The Overcast version lasts longer, so it grants more magic transference. Tzeentch's Firestorm is a vortex spell. It creates 3 pillars of flame which move randomly in the targeted area. These deal damage and apply the Warp Flame effect. The Overcast version causes the armor-piercing damage to increase. And finally, Infernal Gateway is another vortex spell. This creates a tear in the mortal plane, which creates a stationary area that deals massive damage. The Overcast version increases the armor-piercing damage. Next up we have the Lore of Slaanesh, and this is the first real info we have on the lusty Lord of Indulgence, so the hype is really building. Lash of Slaanesh is a breath spell. This deals armor-piercing damage in a cone shape and also sends enemies flying. The Overcast version increases the armor-piercing damage. Acquiescence is a hex spell. This decreases the speed and melee defense of a single enemy unit. The Overcast version has an increased effect on speed. Hysterical Frenzy is an augment spell. This buffs the armor-piercing weapon damage and melee attack of a target unit, whilst also causing them to go on a rampage. The Overcast version increases armor-piercing damage even further. Purveying of Slaanesh is a direct damage spell. It deals damage over time and reduces the melee attack of a single enemy unit. The Overcast version increases the duration and therefore the damage. Slicing Shards is a bombardment spell. It bombards an area with explosive glass shards that deal moderate damage. The Overcast version increases this damage. And finally, Phantasmagoria is a hex spell. It reduces the leadership of units in an area and prevents them from moving. The Overcast version increases the duration of the effects. Next we have the Plague Pappy himself and the Law of Nurgle. Miasma of Pestilence is a hex spell. It reduces the melee attack and charge bonus of a single enemy unit. The Overcast changes this into an area of effect. Stream of Corruption is a breath spell. It deals poison damage in a long thin cone shape, and of course inflicts the poison effect on all units hit. The Overcast version deals more damage. The Curse of the Leper is an augment spell, increases the armor of units, and allows them to reflect some damage back at their opponents. The Overcast version increases the power of both effects. The Rancid Visitations is a direct damage spell. This deals damage over time to a single unit, whilst covering them in filth. The Overcast version lasts longer, so does more damage. The Blight Boil is an explosion spell that creates a massive explosion after a short delay in a targeted area. The Overcast version increases the damage of this explosion. And finally, Flesh Abundance is a regeneration spell. This greatly replenishes the HP of a single unit, and the Overcast version changes the spell to affect units in an area. Now on to the non-demonic laws, starting with the Law of Yin from Cathay. Storm of Shadows is a hex spell. This greatly reduces the speed of a target unit, and the Overcast allows you to target units in an area. Cloak of Jet is a hiding or stealth spell. This grants a single target unit snipe, stalk, and unspotable, essentially making them invisible. The Overcast version increases the duration of these effects. The Blossom Wind is a wind spell that deals damage in a column shape, but also inflicts the blinded effect. The Overcast version deals increased armor-piercing damage. Missile Mirror is a hex spell. This causes a single enemy unit's projectiles to be fired back at them for a short duration. The Overcast version lasts longer and has a longer cast range. Talons of Night is a vortex spell. This deals damage in a stationary area. The Overcast increases this damage. And finally, the Ancestral Warriors is a summon spell. This summons a unit of Ancestral Warriors to fight for you. These are a strong halberds unit, but they will degrade over time. The Overcast version increases the cast range. And the Law of Yang is our other Cathay Law. The Jade Shield is a ward save spell. This grants significant damage resistance to a single unit. The Overcast version increases the duration of this effect. Dragon's Breath is a breath spell. This deals damage in a cone area and applies fire damage to enemies. The Overcast version increases this damage. Wall of Wind and Fire is a wind spell. This creates a wide and slow-moving wall of fire that damages anything it comes into contact with. The Overcast version increases the armor-piercing damage. Stone Ground Stance is an augment spell. It causes all units in an area to gain mass and be harder to knock over with cav charges, as well as an increase to leadership and expert charge defense. The Overcast version affects a wider area. The Might of Heaven and Earth is another augment spell. It imbues a single unit with flaming magical attacks, as well as increasing the melee attack stat, base, and armor-piercing damage. The Overcast version offers increased stat bonuses. And finally, the Constellation of the Dragon is an explosion spell. It creates a great explosion that deals high damage in a large area. The Overcast version deals even more armor-piercing damage. And finally, we come to the Kislev laws, starting with the Law of Ice. Ice Sheet is a hex spell. It causes enemy units in an area to have reduced speed and charge speed, and it does not have an overcast. Ice Maiden's Kiss is a breath spell. It deals damage in a short, wide cone and applies the Frostbite debuff. The Overcast version deals increased damage. Frostblades is an augment spell. It imbues a single unit with magical attacks and increases weapon and armor-piercing damage, as well as melee attack. The Overcast version increases all of these bonuses. Death Frost is a direct damage spell, and it deals damage over time to a single unit. The Overcast version increases the amount of damage dealt. Crystal Sanctuary is an augment spell. It prevents a single allied unit from moving, but grants a massive increase in damage resistance. And finally, the Hearts of Winter is a direct damage spell. It deals massive damage in an area while slowing enemies, and both effects build in strength over the very long duration. The Overcast increases all of these values at every single stage. And finally, the other Kislev law and our final law, the Law of Tempest. Gust of True Flight is an augment spell. It grants a single unit an increase to range and accuracy. The Overcast version allows it to hit units in an area. Hailstorm is a bombardment spell. This bombards a medium-sized area with explosive projectiles. The Overcast version lasts longer and fires more projectiles. Swift Wing is another augment spell. It grants all units in an area increases to speed and charge bonus. The Overcast version increases the area of these effects. Biting Wind is a wind spell. It deals damage in a long column area. The Overcast version increases the damage and armor-piercing damage. Hawks of Miska is a vortex spell. This creates a randomly moving vortex that deals damage and applies Discourage to enemy units hit. The Overcast version increases the damage dealt. And finally, Blizzard is another vortex. This creates a large vortex that deals damage and applies the Frostbite effect. The Overcast version deals even more increased damage. And there you have it, folks. That is all the info we have right now, but any more developments and they'll be brought to you right here in the Warhammer 3 newsroom, so be sure to subscribe to that channel so you can stay up to date. If you enjoyed this video, then do be sure to leave a like and let me know in the comments which Lore of Magic you're most excited to use when you get your hands on the game. If you enjoy the show and want to support it, then be sure to check out COLONELDAMNEDERS.store for all our fantastic merch designs, for any occasion on a variety of products. Alternatively, you could become a supporter at any of our 3 tiers, either here on YouTube memberships, on Patreon, or even on Twitch. Tier 3 supporters get shoutouts like It's Your Boy LC for their support at the Unclean Ones tier. One more thank you to you all for watching, and for now, I've been Colonel Damneders, and I will see you next turn.